Okay, so thank you for attending webinar. Today's webinar topic is AI agent-powered frameworks managing hospital innovation with some part of the sustainability innovation also. So we scheduled two big agenda. First one is to Richard McEljohn. He is an expert in hospital innovation. So he is with Innovation Hub Lahey Hospital and Medical Center. So he will share his experience, what the challenges with managing hospital innovation. And then I will talk about the mostly technical part. I will explain about I we have a spectrum of the the hospital innovation topics, but I'm today I'm going to pick three. So I'm going to talk about clinical research in hospital environment, and then how to innovating in the IP space, and also we are going to touch upon the sustainability, especially environmental sustainability. So okay, so first to Richard, who will talk about his topic. Okay, so Richard, could you please start?
Amazing. Thank you, Alex. And just while I get my slides hopefully to appear on your screen, just let me know when you can see them.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you again to Alex. I think hats off to you because you do a wonderful job putting on these webinars, bringing the community together. And I know you and I have been discussing over the past months now about the topic of AI and the opportunity. And I think this is a key part of this message. As much as we're thinking about the challenges, the opportunity to collaborate. And I really think this is the age of collaboration when it comes to innovation. So I'm Richard Meiklejohn. I am the Innovation Hub Program Manager at Leahy's new Innovation Hub, which we just officially launched actually last Friday. So we're going to talk about some super fresh information as much as some of the emerging trends. And I'm also the founder of an organization called U-Shape MedTech, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end of this presentation. So again, I mentioned that Alex and I have been chatting for a while. We actually attended, I think, Alex, a really super interesting event earlier this month at Microsoft in Burlington, which is actually just next to Leahy Hospital. And Paul Swider, who brings together these communities, was running the event. And in the first presentation, he had a gentleman on stage who was talking about a challenge I'm sure we can all relate to. So picture this, you go into a meeting, you have an agenda, and then of course somebody requests some information, somebody requests some data during that meeting, and you can't access it. And so what happens, of course, is you leave that meeting, you have to go and find that data. If you're lucky, within 24 hours, you'll find that information. Of course, then you have to go back. Whether there's another request for more data, of course, you probably have to have another meeting. It's a very inefficient, tedious process. And so when I think about one of the key challenges of managing hospital innovation, how do we break down those data silos? How do we make information more accessible? And for me, that's the big promise around AI is how do we get these agents talking to that data? How do we make it again more accessible so we can start to sort of build upon all the information and insights that we sit on? So a little bit now on our strategy. So I mentioned again, the Leahy Innovation Hub is a brand new initiative, again, officially launched just last Friday. And so we have these three pillars, but how we think about them is these dual imperatives, two key things, and it's people and it's planet. And so, of course, our mission as a hospital is to provide excellent patient care. We want to look after our patients. We want to look after our community. We want to provide the best quality of healthcare that we possibly can. But none of that is possible without looking after the people, of course, who look after the patients. And I think we've known about this emerging trend we've seen through the pandemic, where the workforce is burnt out. They're constantly under pressure. We're actually then leading to these shortages because people are leaving the workforce. I'll talk about this in the next slide. So it's paramount when we think about these three pillars and these dual imperatives that the workforce is not overlooked, that we support our colleagues through this journey to leverage AI as a solution. And then lastly, the other part of this dual imperative, which you must think about in parallel, is the sustainability piece. And again, we're going to touch on a little bit today. And again, if you like, Alex, I have a short presentation, happy to sort of go through at a high level on some of the things we're doing here at Leahy and across our wider system. And again, some of the sort of challenges we think when we're specifically thinking about sustainability. So really what we want to embed is this culture. And I really think of this as this think global to local mindset. So where I'm from in Scotland, there's a famous lecturer called Patrick Geddes, and he was one of the people who was supposed to have coined that phrase. And I think that's paramount when we think about we have this local implementation. We need to understand what are those global broader trends? What are those common problems we all face? And so that first one I spoke about is these workforce shortages, which come often about through burnout, who are forcing people out of the workplace. And so the World Health Organization earlier this year reported there's going to be a shortage of more than 11 million workers in healthcare by the end of this decade alone. And even when we look at this local level in Massachusetts, there was the Massachusetts Hospital Association report last year, this healthcare and crisis report it was called, where there was 20,000 unfilled positions in Massachusetts alone. So this isn't just a global problem, this is clearly a local problem and a problem we all need to think about. And so, of course, that second trend is natural when healthcare leaders come together and they're asked, well, AI, can it fill that, can it fill that gap? Can it actually help us? And so, of course, they're excited by the technology. They're excited by this opportunity to leverage AI. And this is something that's highlighted by the Philips Future Health Index. So all the sources are highlighted at the bottom in order of the trends I'm highlighting here. And that Future Health Index is something that Philips does every year. This is their 10th year they've done this report. And they go out and they speak to thousands of clinicians. They speak to thousands of leaders across healthcare. And so again, they're excited by the opportunity for AI. Now, the third trend brings us back down a little bit because what we see when we think about something specific is a Gen AI application where there was hope to reduce some of the admin burnout by drafting responses into patient portal messages. Actually, the 10% figure is the level of physician engagement and actual use of that as a tool. So there's still a gap, I think, when we talk about AI, about actually using it and finding it's at the right level, it's in the right words, it's actually adding value. And what this all talks to is trust, this fourth trend. And I think this is absolutely critical that when we're using AI, we're starting to build trust. We're starting to include the patients. And so this last step talks about the gap between the patient trust and the physician trust. So we're far more optimistic about this technology, even though there are big concerns, which I can touch on next. But clearly, again, we need to make sure we take patients with us on this journey. So as we built up towards, over the past 6 months, building up towards our launch event last Friday, we've been speaking to all our colleagues, we've been speaking to key stakeholders, and we're getting this internal validation of what's happening through this sort of external secondary research I was just referring to. And so we have this strong hunger, we have this strong appetite for artificial intelligence. It's validated that, what we see is that 85% figure I just referred to, we're seeing that internally as well. Again, there's people who want to and are interested in leveraging AI as a solution. And then this middle one, they're really literally the people are crying out for help. People are saying, hey, I just have too many paperwork tasks. I just have too many emails. My inbox is overflowing. How can AI help us to be more efficient? How can AI get us back to actually what the mission is, which is caring for patients, spending time with patients? And so this last one, I think, is a great example I can share with you of where we're seeing some positive outcome. So on one of our panels last week, we had 4 clinicians, and they were talking about what we call our ambient clinical documentation solution. And really, that's just a fancy way for saying it's voice capture of the doctor speaking to the patient, which is then auto-transcribing notes into the electronic health record. And so whilst there's still a task and a process for the doctor to go back in and check those notes are accurate, actually the satisfaction level is very high, so much higher than that 10% figure. There's well over 50% of our colleagues who've been exposed to this technology are now using it on a day-to-day and regular basis. And so again, this is a great example where AI is coming to the fore, it's easing workflows, it's allowing data to flow in a way that's acceptable and trusted. So leading into the actual event itself, again, we really wanted to spark a discussion. So I know Alex was able to join us, but there was literally nearly 200 people in the audience over the event. And 70% of them were clinical leaders and clinical staff and operational staff from inside the hospital. So of course, it's really important that we take them on this journey, that we truly understand, like, what are their concerns? So we had fantastic participation. And then as part of this exercise, we had a live audience tool. So we had, I think, 7 dynamic sessions, and we were able to capture, like, what is the audience sentiment? What is the audience concern? What do people think? What are their ideas about how we actually leverage AI? And so it was fantastic to get that insight. And what this really builds up to, and what we're doing as our next exercise, is building out a map and a visual guide of what's happening around innovation within Leahy. And so this building up a system of how do we prioritize our unmet needs? And of course, it starts with identification. It starts with having those conversations with all our clinical staff, with all our operational staff, and systemizing that into a database approach. So when we apply something like AI, it's in a structured format, it's in an organized format, and makes it again more accessible, and starts to break down some of those data silos I mentioned at the beginning. So we unfortunately do struggle from persistent bottlenecks. I think about this all the time, like in this role of innovation. I'm just so passionate about how do we start to unpick some of these bottlenecks. And again, they occur across the whole paradigm of going from this idea through to commercialization and adopting new solutions in healthcare. And I think of this a lot of this underlying factors, this infrastructure gap, where a lot of hospitals and hospital systems rely on dated old systems. We're transitioning from legacy systems. We're using multiple pieces of software for scheduling, for processes. And so that's one of these big challenges that we need to improve on going forward. It's like, how do we centralize that information? Obviously, with the rollout of platforms like Epic and Oracle, we use Epic with inside Leahy. That starts to provide that foundation where we have a more centralized system of organizing electronic health records. But there's still much more to be done in that journey. And again, I keep on coming back to this administrative burden. It's just so critical. I think it's one of the areas where we think about AI being applied. There's great opportunity because clearly, when you think about patient care, there's a highly regulated process. And some of those more sort of manual day-to-day tasks, I think there's some low-lying fruit where we can start to automate and we can start to leverage, I think, these AI agents. And kind of excited to see always, Alex, what you're thinking about on this side with the demonstrations about how we can leverage some of these solutions and how we can start to use AI to create short-term value in the near term. And I guess the big hope for me, of course, is like, how do we unpick some of those data silos? Can we get these AI agents talking to one another and actually then making that information more accessible? And so even in the short term, is there a way where we can start to make sure that the data is secure, of course, but again, it's more accessible to the colleagues at the right time when they need that information. And it's allowing us to overcome ultimately missed insights, missed opportunities because that data is not accessible when we need it. Okay, so I've spoken a lot about challenges. I want to try and turn the corner a little bit, start to think about, well, what are we doing inside Leahy? How are we thinking about our strategy of actually taking and empowering solutions? And this all starts with clinical driven innovation. Now, what this doesn't mean, and we're not expecting clinicians to come up with the ideas and to actually create this all from scratch. But I think it's so paramount. If you ask any innovator, like the number one thing they need to get started is they need data, they need validation. And where does that best source come from? It comes from our front line, it comes from our nurses, it comes from our doctors who are dealing with patients on a day-to-day basis. So I think as much as we can start to unpick, some of that organized data, I think still getting the voice of those key stakeholders is absolutely paramount and making sure they're involved, not just the beginning of the journey, but all the way through it, truly understanding and mapping workflows and thinking about how do we integrate any solution that we want to adopt. And a big part of this is back then to that I mentioned this think global, act local mindset. So when we think about strategic partnerships, it's not just about partnerships here within the state of Massachusetts or even in America. It's about having that international lens. It's about understanding that innovation can come from anywhere. And so we want to foster and collaborate those strategic partnerships that will allow us to sort of do value-driven collaborative commercialization. And I think that's so critical when we think about collaborative innovation that we just think about it's more than just what's happening here. It's about having that wider lens on the opportunities because, again, we just have so many shared problems. And by embedding that framework and that structure and that process, then we can start to think about driving tangible impact in the short term and the medium term and going forward. So we can truly start to think about accessing data, mapping the workflow, applying agile methodologies, and then really setting ourselves up to be able to scale once we have the right solution in place. So just a little bit of thought from my side, and I know you're going to be speaking, Alex, about specific solutions, for AI. But again, I think about this at this fundamental foundation level. So going back to those data silos, like when we're going out and doing this exercise and mapping unmet needs, and even just thinking about solutions, we have to have structured databases. We have to have structured systems so we can start to be more organized. We can start to break down and design systems that don't allow those data silos to exist. So that's a big part of like how we think about leveraging AI when it comes to innovation management. And what this truly talks to is a sort of more data-driven system analysis approach. I was speaking to a fantastic leader just on Monday, Dr. Leo Selly, who's one of our clinicians in the Beth Israel system. And he also teaches at MIT, he travels around the world talking about AI bias. And of course, one of their concerns is around, well, who's liable for AI when things go wrong? And I think that's fundamental, again, back to this approach where we need to clearly take a data-driven approach, but we need to make sure our clinical leaders are involved in this process. We need to make sure we build trust from day one. And if we have that foundation in place, what it allows us, of course, to do is to accelerate implementation, creating a step-by-step approach to go from foundation to implementation and being ready to truly scale by having all our ducks in order. So this is my last quick summary slide here, and I'm passionate about the opportunity for innovation. I live this or breathe this day to day. And so I think, again, we live truly in an age of collaborative innovation. I think AI clearly can be transformative. Clearly, there's a huge opportunity to leverage what is a powerful tool. But it's so important that our clinical staff are empowered. So again, we start with that dual imperative. We start with that mission of enhancing patient care and outcomes. But when we think about optimizing operational performance, we make sure we include both the patients and the providers in that planning, in that human-centered design. And that's going to allow us truly to create a future-ready healthcare system and set sail in the right direction. So I'm optimistic for the future. As always, I think in innovation, it's a big part of this is the culture, the mission, and how we actually make colleagues feel. And a lot of this ultimately comes back to great communication. And so the last summary slide I mentioned at the beginning, I'm also the founder of U-Shape MedTech. So I run my own podcast called the MedTech Impact Podcast over the past 3 years. A lot of that's been providing a platform for innovation. But what U-Shape MedTech is seeking to do is to foster community and to foster those external bridges I mentioned. So if we want to drive these scalable solutions, again, we need to foster those partnerships both locally, nationally, and internationally. And so again, that allows us to start to foster this new paradigm for innovation where we have a more community-driven approach, a more value-driven approach to get to this value-based care that everyone would love to get to. So I'm going to close out here and just say if you're interested, please do head over to the website. There's a couple of sign-ups. There's one if you just want to join the community. If you're a provider, there's some high-level questions just sort of making you think about that benchmarking exercise of like how are you approaching innovation? Where are you now in that journey? If you want to take out your phones, feel free to scan the QR code that will take you to the website. I'm sure, Alex, afterwards we can share a copy of these slides so people have access to them. And again, the big thing for us is we're going to be launching this innovation challenge come August. And what that's seeking to do is to provide this pipeline. So when we're understanding our unmet needs, we have a pipeline for the matching solutions and we can bring them to the table. We can bring them to Massachusetts. We can bring that best-in-class AI solution at the right time, at the right place. So thank you, Alex, for this short presentation. I'm going to hand it back to you. I'm happy to check the chat if there's any questions. And again, I've got another short presentation on the sustainability piece, which has my contact details. So if we have time, happy to run through that just as preferred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll stop sharing my screen as well. 2 seconds.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So I think that during my talks, if you have any question to Richard, then you can ask in the chat, and then Richard will give you an answer. And then after my talk, actually, we'll have another separate session for the Q&A. So I need to go over quickly about my topic. Okay, first share. Okay, so I'll start from the let's see slideshow. Okay, so I will show up about the some demos of the actually Richard talk about many different kind of space actually that the hospital innovation is needed. And then actually we talk about the topic and then a lot of the topic actually I already share in several different like opportunities in speaking opportunity in other event. So I picked the three topic actually that maybe not you don't have any commercial type of solution already exists because there are many different space to require innovation. And then particularly, I'm very expertise to bring the solution for the specific challenges. I have a 2 years experience here from the older healthcare area expert to talk about their challenges and the bottleneck or the pain in the neck. And then I have an exercise bring my solution and then try implementing using AI. Particularly, I have a very good at in conceptual level implementation. So I will show you three topics actually that I figured that you may not seen in the commercial space already existing like a product, commercial products, but actually it is really necessary in hospital innovation. So I just briefly talk about is the what is AI agent. Usually people talk about agentic AI, but the concept is similar, but the basically I'm not implementing all the backend. For example, that all the perception, brain, reasoning and the decision making using memory, and then talk with outside tools and then have action. It really happen is in backside and continuously monitoring, continuously looking at reasoning. That's agentic AI. But actually, I don't have any kind of that kind of resource in my hand. So I just in the front end is a complete agentic AI, but in back end is a traditional type of the AI agent. So in hybrid way that I actually implement. But in the commercial level, you can implement in the purely agentic AI using this kind of concept. So having that in mind, so what I'm going to show you demo is to first that I found that there are many, even that recently I have worked with some other startups. The particularly, I have a two startup actually. I have in the direct advisor position. They try to solve some challenges in clinical research and clinical trial space, and then look at their solution and their innovation, and I found that there is a gap because there is no solution actually particularly focused on in hospital environment. That's I found. So I found that this is particular space, even there are other kind of like challenges, even challenges in clinical research and trials, but particularly in the hospital-based clinical research have a separate focus we needed. So I look at the like what's the challenges, the structure gap, workforce limitation. Something have already have a limitation where this kind of limitation gap is already that the relate with Richard mentioned about what the challenge is in hospital innovation. So then regulatory burden and then patient engagement deficits and outdated technology. So I try to resolve, address this issue using agent AI. So I try to do like this kind of solution can implement it like automatic or anything eligible patient via real-time EHR analysis. So Richard has mentioned about how to utilizing your data silos. So AI agent is very expertise in looking at the data silo and then integrate them for and then give the insight. So this is one very strong like a characteristic of the agent, so you can use it, and then guiding patients through the multilingual personalization. So he's kind of like very good at this. They are based on large range models, so they are very conversational. They are multilingual cases, so you can have a divorce because recently there are many kind of like a jurisdiction in the like, for example, if you want to comply with the FDA after your clinical trial, actually they require you to be like kind of like the accessibility. So it should be like a health equity and then diversity in the population. So that should be considered, and then supporting or the trial design. And so trial design stays it's involved in the harmonization silo data system across department and sponsor, right? Because this is one the hospital has a silo data can utilizing. So, and then mandatory compliance with many type of the compliance, like especially the HIPAA and FDA guideline. So I just developed based on this framework, and then I will show you demo later. And another topic that I'm interested in is especially in the Massachusetts. So here is a new regulation like Mass Health Bulletin 198. It mandates Scope 1 to GHG. The GHG is a greenhouse gas. It's just like carbon. So scope of one tone is within the scope of your the in-house and your adjacent like hospital infrastructure and facilities, and then another layer is the third party also like in the all up-down supply chain. They need to be comply with they should be comply with some kind of like a upper limit of the how much you can generate the carbon in a yearly or something like that, how you can comply with that. So it is mandatory now. So the some particular hospital in the Massachusetts should comply this, and they comply this, and then that means that they follow the protocol, and that they need to provide the report, the mandatory report to the government about how they comply this one. So for this one actually require a lot of the different type of the management skill required and the data analysis gather data analysis and then provide the insight. So usually I have experienced this place for about 2 years before, but many of the recently there was a lot of the tool available, but I've never seen actually that they can be done in an autonomous way, can really human co-pilot actually in very similar like to the human and then supporting human effort to comply this one. So I just developed framework to how to do in AI agents. So I will show a demo. And another thing that I will show is to hospital innovation, commercialization, and utilization. So this is one actually I focus on that in hospital wise is there are many different type of innovation in happening now, right? Because for example, in the diagnostics and the treatment, also like another like for example in the biopsies or the pathology, they are all related to like for example pharmaceutical and biomedical things. So the hospital actually the innovation power. So, but they don't know how to generate it and how to actually utilize it. Right, because especially like light type, because for example, you're in the MJ type, MGH kind of like big company, big hospital, they have a separated department. They're dedicated person, their expertise, and they do this one. But actually, that I found that in a like a light type kind of like not much like relate to like research institute. For example, MJ should relate to Harvard Medical School or something like that. So in that kind of situation, that it kind of like even if there is a bunch of the innovation activities that happen, actually there is no any kind of like infrastructure can utilize it and create it in a systemic way. So I developed this one to I will show a demo that is starting from the specific pattern that it will give you the what kind of like commercialization path you can have it, and so like what kind of like how licensing license but this application can do the same thing. Like if you have an innovation idea, then how can make a patent, and after that actually how can you make this commercialized. So same framework apply to all kind of like innovation generation and commercialization. So I will show you demo. Okay, so this is a demo about the hospital clinical research. So I use prompt engineering implementing the older function of this is a multi-AI agent system. So I just implementing prompt engineering to assign each agent to some kind of law, and that they utilizing kind of like we ever talk about like a perception, reasoning, memory, and outside tool and act. So they doing that kind of like the workflow they employ. So clinical trial context, like for example, it talk about like what you want to do, like so it's a clinical design planning. So you what you want to do. So it give you guide like eligibility screening, and then what is this one, and the chatbot it provide for like oh okay, so you want to do. So if you want to like for example like after your initial things that you wanna engage with your like participating patient, and then it will talk with the patient about your like legal consent about that. So it give you guide the patient about how to actually the consent about this was this is a very important step. So it'll be automated like initial like year planning and then it will automatically follow whatever the needed. And then it look at the what is the like data harmonization required. So it followed some protocol that it start to like low EHR data and then info and then it cache in the map field and then next week compliance monitoring agent to verify protocol adherence. So it followed like some protocol and then it will guide you about your like clinical trial like a planning and then you're like after that actually it give you like a protocol to how to comply and all the following step is automatically assist you to can done right this is for example patient timeline and then it like protocol fully compliance. So it checked that whether initial design protocol will comply, and then it'll like provide the like a trial agent summary, right? And then it'll be go more like advanced event report agent, quality using agent, multi-state coordinate agent, e-pro. So it'll give you kind of like a guideline, everything. So I will be just show the just like a showcase of the very like essential part. But actually the if you have a different type of the like a starting point and whatever you wanna do, and then it guide you, and then it's better give you a very simple choice, and you can done through your clinical trial, and then it'll give you all the summary and all the required like compliance, and it automatically done. So this is one actually you can have it, and I will show you the carbon footprinting. Okay, so as I mentioned that in a hospital carbon footprint, there are many kind of different facilities and different regulation requirement to you need to start to. So for example, so it give you the like for example, it is AI-driven platform which designed to empower hospital with a real-time environmental intelligence across all three emission scope. So it know about what should be compliant. The scope one is a direct emission from on-site fuel use, fleet, and something like that. Scope two is indirect emission, and scope three is upstream, downstream emission from suppliers, waste, commuting, and something like that. And then the system comply with the GHR protocol ISO 14064 and the Massachusetts Bulletin 19. So it pick and choose, for example, in the Massachusetts hospital can follow this like a Massachusetts 119 reporting requirement. And then it'll use like a large language model powered autonomous agent dynamically ingest activity data from hospital system. So it automatically connects to the hospital data system and then try to get the information and variable emission factors and recommended decarbonization pathway, generate validated research audit and something like that. And then it's like strategic scoping. So it like agent-based emission calculation, compliance and reporting, and sustainability. Okay, so then it will give you the like, for example, step one, the input stage. It will link with the data source, and then it'll ask about like which kind of like the data source actually that you want to use for the calculating carbon generation. For example, the electric energy use like electricity, natural gas, and things like that. It will relate to like the scope one and scope two. And then it'll look at the this kind of thing, and specialized agent to take care of the this comply. So it connect to like for example building management system and energy ERP. So all the IT, the data source, database management system in the hospital, it communicate and get the required information and retrieve, activity data like a natural gas consumption, something like that, required to calculate carbon generation, and then convert it count to like a scope one emission is how much there is a carbon to generation kind. So it calculate the for example the learning an everyday base that connect to the every carbon generating source to calculate the how much carbon it will generate and convert to in the in the compliance there is a compliance like how much they actually comply. For example, the usually metric ton is a unit, then it'll calculate it by the unit, and then based on this, it'll give you some insight. So it calculates energy rate carbon footprint and then it's structural reduction opportunity. So it'll give you the recommendation that, for example, that your current usage of this energy source will generate a bunch of the like carbon. The emission it calculate and then it's AI, so it predicted how much it will be predicted based on this phase. And then it'll recommend it is too much, like whether you cannot be comply with regulation, and it'll give you kind of like a recommendation there, like for example, electric account for the this one. So in the inside optimize agent switching to renewable electricity, something like that, give you some insightful recommendation how to comply. So this is the beauty of the AI agent, not only calculate and reasoning, and then get the insight, and then based on protocol that they recommend what suggest what how you can comply. Okay, then final report, and then the another beauty is that actually it train using the government generate like a regulatory document, so you understand whole the scope, and then you know. But when you try to generate your final report, actually they give you it's like a ChatGPT helping you to writing, so they can help you to how to actually provide your compliance report based on their protocol. So this is the one. And then if you want another the example, then you can try, for example, that they're related to like a third party. Actually, the Scopus 3 is most hard to comply, but fortunately, that not much the required almost all the United States state. But maybe in the future, who knows that the require in the third party carbon generation is concerned, but still is a carbon one, scope one, two is concern. Okay, so I'm going to final one. Okay. So this is the one. This is how actually utilize your the innovation. So you utilize, for example, you have an innovation idea or the patent you already have it, and then it give you what kind of commercialization opportunity you can have, and what kind of market you can have it, and then for example, how can you license out a licensing so you can use in the hospital like a technical innovation. So, for example. So it didn't expect some input. So in this case, I just give you the simple one is to just to choose a number. So example, I will pick up the for example Meditech. So so actually it actually look at the patent information site. So you search for the Google patent and then try to get the information. For example, this is a Medtronic company, it's a famous the medical device company. And then so it give you extract the initial information and try to understand what the content of patent. So I just did the design this AI agent to look at all aspects of the pattern and then try to get the most important information and further like use in the next step for the whether the specific pattern can be utilizing for specific product or kind of like a specific application, something like this. So I just teach them like, for example, mechanism of action and therapeutic rationale and technical modality that it have it, and then it try to understand. And then also like in the claim is the legal right you have it, so it also try to understand what is your legal right through your like a patent, and then it try to understand the every aspect of your patent legal right. And then and then it try to figure out that based on your patent, actually the what kind of like innovation scope you can have it. And then it try to understand the, for example, here is medtech sectors, or what kind of like the specific area focus application they can be applied based on your innovation, and then go to the like all the information is synthesized that give you the very good insight about what the utility of this innovation. And then it's an invention type, problem solved, functional mechanism, technical domain. So every aspect of this pattern is already analyzed, and then give you summarize. So you can think about, because I'm starting from the patent, but it can be like a readjust in the input stage. I can train the AI agent that the AI agent you're expecting the initial input, for example, the initial like innovation idea or something like that. Like for example that or the I want to have an expectation of something maybe based on my idea that I want to know about what kind of like a product or what kind of like a medical like innovation is available. Then we go over the same thing. So the redesign to that kind of like innovation management is no problem. And then it tried to look at the after understand whole the like scope of the this pattern, and then for example you look at the what kind of market wise to look at the commercial potential. So in market mapping, so it tried, for example, the healthcare vertical medical device and then clinical specialty cardiology, something like that. So it give you the very pin down about in the market wise the what kind of like application, for example, neurology, endocrinology, and something like that. They give you the very detailed information, and then if you want to develop based on this some product, for example, medical product, and they'll give you detail about how the pathway, how to actually implement product. So kind of like integrate system, OEM component licensing. So it give you all the like a potential possibility of the commercial opportunity it give you. And then you it can like very detailed about the market segmentation. It give you like for example like what if it like the product can be categorized as some market position, and then what if it like some like commercial potential, like what can the like revenue generation potential you have. Is usually you will see that if you're a startup and then do some like a startup pitch to the investor, then usually they require that what you have it. So that's one actually they use for the like a pitch tech development. For example, that is starting from your like a problem solution statement. Actually, it will give you the market size and then market forecast and then go to market strategy. Everything actually can done. So it has better utilities to relate to any kind of like innovation. And then go detail. So see this, it give you very detail about your market and what kind of like licensing will be good. So it give you all different type of the like market segmentation, some specific product type that actually you can explore using your innovation. And then market fit, strategic market fit is product market fit it provide you. And then it done all the market analysis. So it's starting from the just the innovation patent document. Actually, you can pass it and then try to get all the commercial potential opportunities and then try to fit map to the like the what the current state of the market and then product pathway and then very detail of the market positioning. And then based on this one, actually the beauty of this is actually the most pain point actually if you have this space actually you have a patent and then you want to license out you license in and then most difficult part is who is the right to license or licensor so it give you that matching point. So it kind of like the what kind of company. So you actually look at the search the website and then you look at the within the like you identify the product and the market positioning. It try to find out who is might be the like company that reading this space, and then it try to understand that their business model and then they like the AI agent to try to figure out based on your side information, your innovation information with their side, with the company's specific information, try to match the who has a high potential, maybe interesting in your innovation. So it give you the look at the very specific detail information available and then try to figure out the more fine tuning that it try to give you some ranking that the who might be really interesting in yours. So it give you like a top score. Boston Scientific, both is highly receptive to strategic licensing, particularly in the mechanical subcomponent of. So it give you a suggestion that who might be very interesting in your the innovation they want to license in to their company to further innovate or something like that. And then also like for example, it give you more detail about the strategic fitting. So it give you very detailed about, I will stop here, but it will give you more like outreach optimization means that like what's the best strategy actually to apply your like tactics to the such specific company and who might be the right person to contact something like that. To give you the very detailed information to guide you to have you to utilizing your innovation. So actually the I have for example that additionally there's something actually that Richard already talked about is a very interesting overlap that I did was I have something have some the AI agent framework for the for example healthcare worker like well-being stuff as he mentioned but anyway because I'm a staff here but I have a bunch of the different type of the healthcare agent can apply to in different sectors of the in the whole spectrum of the healthcare. Okay, so I'll stop sharing here. So we left about 10 minutes, so we have a good time to have a Q&A session. Okay, so data. So the data is always, for example, that the large language model has a unit to check up, right? Because you know that for example, that I have seen the all, for example, even I attended like a hackathon, and then recently I also like have a give a talk or some of the young AI readers in happening in MIT, and then I want to give a talk, and then a lot of people talk about very similar question, right? When they talk about it, and then answer is human in the loop, right? Because it should be checked, right? It should be checked, and then and so there is a automatic way. For example, there is a simple like a lag, like about some technique, whether your the data analysis is good or not, and also like I'm doing things similar things. So to implementing the checking the data and look at the answer, then whether is a good or not. So I always check. So I'm the person actually human in the lab in this process, but actually, you know that 100 you cannot guarantee 100%, right? So there is a maybe additional guarantee that you know that there are a lot of people are already in this space. And for example, one of my partner have it particularly you cannot like develop the tool actually for in the general purpose because a different large language model has a different characteristic. So my partner actually developed particularly focus on ChatGPT, and then they have some additional mechanism to check the bias, right, and hallucination, right. So you need the additional tool, but not 100% sure. So the expert like in between and then check everything it will be required. So that's why th- that's what actually that I shared this with Richard before in my talk in the Microsoft that actually that everything I have done can be implemented, right? But in theoretical way, I can do in this space, but that's not mean it can be actually implemented in the hospital or the healthcare system, right? Because of that kind of problem, risk problem, right? So usually that the procedure is to like a low risk but high impact, right? So all I have seen is a low risk because sustainability, yeah, is actually the if you're something missing, right? 'Cause nobody actually harm too much, right? But it's comply, right? Is a climate risk, right? It's good to, right? But it's not no harm. Like if you have some mistake or calculating or something like that, right? So and the innovation, like you can find out if there is a mistake about like find out the good potential license doesn't harm to you, right? Because you can do another way. So usually the reason my focus is low risk, high impact. Usually I'm focused on to supporting innovation activity itself, right? Rather than directly to touch upon like in the patient and patient kind of like treatment stuff or something like the clinical stuff. That's another clinical trial is okay, right? Because if you've done something, it's not much harm, right? But its actual treatment is somewhat different. So it will be require some time because whenever some new technology coming that I experienced that for 30 years, different time of it, they require some sort of settle down, right? Depending on the characteristic or market or infrastructure ecosystem, they need some time to settle down. For example, that I use, for example, like a digital camera in all the time. You if you haven't used all the time the digital camera, how the poor the image, right? But then after 10 years, 20 years, right? And then AI agent, especially even the AI in healthcare is very early, right? It's not much. The only that you have seen that AI is like hospital operation, like revenue cycle management or something like a very, very technical operation side, or some kind of like other states, like for example, very highly well set up like a deep learning in the well set up like a diagnostic, like 99.9% accuracy is can be achieved through the high quality data, even if how much you input your cost, right? And otherwise, that's very difficult to implement in an actual like clinical situation. And so that's why that I do a lot of thing, different thing, but I'm going to wait until a certain time. But I really focus on is to the low risk, high impact space now. Richard, do you have any comment about that?
Well, I think just highlighting you are an IP attorney, so you come at this with a great voice and reason when you're creating these tools. And I think again, you bring a great understanding of the extra layer of complexity. So obviously, when I'm talking about hospital innovation in that first presentation, it's a fairly high level,
Hmm.
and I think you're taking this next layer down, which is great to see around some of the challenges. I think that's a great question that was asked around, and you honestly answered it brilliantly. It's how we think about it. It's human-centered design. We need to make sure the humans at the center of it, they remain empowered by this technology, but not overpowered by that responsibility about what AI brings to the table. And so it's a balancing act as always that I think there's great value in terms of the automation part of the workflow and actually being able to access that data in a structured way. But ultimately, somebody to your point needs to be able to check it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so let me check there is any question. Private security using such tool. Yeah, that's a common because usually in the healthcare the fortunate thing is that actually all the healthcare systems should comply HIPAA. So so
Hmm.
because a lot of people ask, oh, this is the same question. Like for example, if you are not in the healthcare, and have been one time in the hackathon is general AI. So there are a bunch of different applications, and then I talk about healthcare. I am the only person about healthcare, and then some guy, oh, how you comply the like privacy and security? Oh, that's no problem in healthcare because you need to comply the HIPAA, and then they provide the protocol. So that means that if you follow the protocol and then you measure it and then they comply and they comply. But that's not complete conflict. But anyway, because that's the one way, right? Because but there, I know that there are the HIPAA is a government the scope, but in the like other scope, you have a different type of the another measure of the like a security privacy measure, and then some solution developer actually the because of the competition that actually the is that everyone just HIPAA comply and then you want to be differentiated with you and then they had, oh, in addition to HIPAA we have additional kind of like a layer of the protecting we comply other kind of sophisticated like private security protocol we actually have a certification or something like that, right? So that's one yeah, that's one always with even not in the AI in IT digital system and required it, yeah. Okay, so it's almost time. So, thank you, Richard. Really, I appreciate your talk, and then I hope we will keep working together to have a kind of fantastic innovation we can bring to the hospital and healthcare system. And okay, so a pride nature idea. Okay, yeah, that's one. Okay. So what you talk about is okay. So no, because I think that there are two issues. Like, for example, if you think about the legal issue that I, because I'm attorney, the privacy protection is kind of like a different measure. You should be think about it, right? So that's another measure. Because, for example, that you have because even if you have a HIPAA compliance, right? Even if that actually, if there is a breach of your data, right? Because that always happen. Then there is a security measures to be you have it, but that's just kind of like legal measures, and I'm not sure about any viable solution for that measure. But anyway, one thing that we talk about something legal matter is Richard talk about who is liable that AI have some problem. Right? I had that talk one time seminar, exactly the same title. Who is liable when AI did some mistake, right? Everything, everyone, right? Everyone stakeholders. In the stakeholder is a developer and even the user, doctor, right? And hospital, right? So this is another layer because, for example, in the United States, actually the hospital and doctor are separate, right? So in the United States, that something you adopt in the hospital, you adopt something and doctor use it, and then something mistake, right? And then solution provider doctor and hospital all equally liable, right? So there should be measure you think about it, right? Okay, so it's time. Okay, so thank you for attending today's webinar. So, as you know, that I regularly organize a webinar, and the next topic will be very fantastic. That's one and another one actually. That I hope to see you in another webinar. And thank you for attending to this webinar to everyone. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you. Bye bye.